They said a rejected Omega had no place touching sacred instruments. They said her trembling hands would only produce discord. But when Lysandra drew the bow across those ancient strings in front of the entire pack, the scent of her power hit the Alpha King like lightning, and everyone realized they'd mocked the one wolf destined to stand beside a god. The apartment is silent, except for the drip of the leaky faucet. Lysandra sits on the edge of her narrow cot, staring at her hands in the dim light filtering through the cracked window. Her fingers are long, elegant, made for delicate work. They should be creating beauty. Instead, they shake. She presses them together, trying to still the tremor that has haunted her for 3 years. It started the night of her rejection. The night Garrett, her promised alpha, stood before the Ironclaw pack and declared her unworthy. "A wolf who cannot shift properly has no place as my mate," he'd announced, his voice carrying across the ceremonial grounds. "She is incomplete. Defective." The memory still burns like acid in her chest. Her wolf, her other half, had always been weak, small, struggling to emerge fully during transformations. While other Omegas shifted with grace and power, Lysandra's transitions were agonizing, incomplete, leaving her caught between forms, gasping and humiliated. The pack healers had no explanation. They called it a spiritual blockage, as if her own soul was rejecting itself. After the rejection, she'd been moved here, to the eastern edge of Ironclaw territory, where the apartment buildings housed the forgotten ones. The widows, the injured, the failures. Her window overlooks the industrial district, all concrete and rust, far from the forests where the pack runs together under the moon. She hasn't shifted in 2 years. She's stopped trying. But there is one thing that has never failed her. One gift that remained untouched by whatever curse haunts her wolf. Lysandra's gaze drifts to the corner of the room, where a battered violin case leans against the wall. It had been her grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of their bloodline. Her grandmother, Mira, had been different too, an Omega who never quite fit the mold, who spent more time with her music than with pack politics. Some wolves sing with their voices, Mira used to whisper, her weathered fingers guiding Lysandra's small hands across the strings. But we sing with our souls. The violin doesn't lie. It finds the truth buried deep inside and sets it free. Mira had died when Lysandra was 15, taking with her the only acceptance Lysandra had ever known. The violin was all that remained. She hasn't played it in public since the rejection. Music was considered a sacred art among wolves, reserved for ceremonies, for celebrations, for moments of communal joy. A rejected Omega had no business making music. It would be presumptuous, inappropriate, another reminder of her failure to belong. So, the violin stays in its case, and Lysandra works her shifts at the pack's textile warehouse, sorting fabric in silence, eating her meals alone, existing in the gray space between exile and belonging. The cold from the concrete floor seeps into her bones. The loneliness is a physical weight pressing on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She pulls her threadbare sweater tighter and lies back on the cot, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after that. This is her life now. This is all it will ever be. The rejection happened on the night of the autumn equinox, the most important ceremony in the Ironclaw calendar. Lysandra had been 18, barely a month past her final maturation, when the bond with Garrett was supposed to be formalized. She'd known him since childhood. He was 5 years older, already a respected warrior, handsome and confident. The match had been arranged by their families when she was just a pup, a political alliance between 2 old bloodlines. She'd tried so hard to be worthy of him. She'd studied pack history, learned the traditional songs, practiced the ceremonial dances, but her wolf wouldn't cooperate. Every time she shifted, it was agony. Her bones would crack and reform, but the transformation never completed properly. She'd end up collapsed on the ground, half human, half wolf, whimpering in pain, while others looked away in embarrassment. "It's nerves," her mother insisted, desperation in her eyes. "Once you're bonded to Garrett, once you feel secure, your wolf will settle." But the bond ceremony required a full shift. It required both wolves to recognize each other, to intertwine their essences. When the moment came, when Garrett stood before her in his magnificent silver wolf form, Lysandra tried. She pushed with everything she had. calling to her wolf, begging her to emerge. The transformation started and then stuttered. Her body seized, caught between forms, and she collapsed at Garrett's feet, gasping, incomplete. The gathered pack watched in horrified silence. Garrett shifted back to human form, his face twisted with disgust and humiliation. That's when he'd spoken the words that shattered her world. The official rejection followed pack law. He pressed his palm over her heart and severed the incomplete bond. The pain was blinding, like having her chest ripped open. She'd screamed, but no sound came out. Just a whistling wheeze as her lungs struggled to function. Her family had been ruined by association. Her father lost his position on the pack council. Her mother stopped speaking to her, the shame too great to bear. Her younger brother, Cassian, tried to defend her once and was beaten by Garrett's friends for his trouble. After that, he stopped visiting. The pack's judgment was clear. She was broken, cursed. An Omega who couldn't shift properly was worse than useless. She was a liability. A weakness in their collective strength. They moved her to this apartment, gave her the warehouse job, and collectively decided to forget she existed. But the worst part, the part that haunted her in the dark hours before dawn, was that she couldn't entirely blame them. She was broken, her wolf was broken, and she had no idea why. The only mercy was her grandmother's violin. Music didn't require shifting. Music didn't care about pack politics or Omega hierarchies. When she played alone in her apartment, late at night when no one could hear, she could almost remember what it felt like to be whole. The knock comes on a Tuesday evening, sharp and authoritative. Lysandra drops the piece of bread she was eating, her heart immediately hammering. No one knocks on her door. Ever. Open up. The voice is clipped, professional. She recognizes it, Dax, one of the pack's enforcers. Not unkind, but not friendly either. Just doing his job. She opens the door a crack. Dax stands in the hallway, his muscular frame filling the doorway, his expression neutral. Alpha Brennan has called a mandatory assembly. Tonight. 7 o'clock at the Grand Hall. Every member of Ironclaw Pack is required to attend. Lysandra's mouth goes dry. Every member? Those were his exact words. Dax's eyes flicker with something that might be pity. The Supreme Alpha is visiting from the Northern Territories. Violin Darkwater. You've heard of him? Everyone had heard of him. Violin Darkwater, the Alpha King, ruler of the 5 Northern Territories, commander of more than 2,000 wolves. He was a legend, a nightmare, a force of nature. They said he'd killed a rogue alpha, with his bare hands at age 16. They said his wolf was black as midnight, and twice the size of a normal alpha. They said he'd never found his mate, that his heart was as cold as the mountains he ruled from. Why is he here? Lysandra whispers. Inspection. The Northern Council wants to assess the strength and loyalty of the border packs. Ironclaw needs to make a good impression. Dax shifts his weight, uncomfortable. That means everyone presents, no exceptions. Alpha Brennan was very clear. It's a trap, Lysandra thinks wildly. They want to parade her out, to show the Supreme Alpha their one defective Omega, to demonstrate how mercifully they've handled their damaged goods. Or maybe they just want to pretend she doesn't exist, hiding her in the back where the Supreme Alpha won't notice their shame. I'll be there, she manages. Dax nods curtly and leaves. The door closes, and Lysandra stands frozen in the sudden silence, the Grand Hall. She hasn't set foot in that building since her rejection. The thought of walking through those massive doors, of standing under those soaring ceilings while hundreds of wolves stare at her chest tightens with panic. But there's no choice. Defying an alpha's direct command was exile at best, death at worst. And defying a command related to the Supreme Alpha's visit? That was treason. She has 4 hours to prepare herself for the worst night of her life. Lysandra stands in front of her tiny bathroom mirror, trying to make herself presentable. Her hair, a dull brown that never quite shines like other Omegas, hangs limp around her face. Her skin is pale from too many days inside the windowless warehouse. Her eyes, once bright amber, look faded, lifeless. She owns 3 dresses, one for work stained, one for sleeping, full of holes, and one that used to be for special occasions. She pulls on the third dress, a simple navy blue cotton thing that her mother had bought her 4 years ago, back when Lysandra's future still held promise. It's loose now. She's lost weight, surviving on warehouse wages that barely cover rent and food. As she buttons the dress with shaking fingers, her eyes fall on the violin case in the corner. An insane impulse strikes her. What if she brought it? What if— No. That's madness. Rejected omegas don't perform. They don't draw attention. They certainly don't bring sacred instruments to formal pack assemblies. She pushes the thought away. The walk to the grand hall takes 40 minutes. She could take the pack's communal transport, but the thought of sitting in a bus full of wolves who'd all pretend she doesn't exist is worse than walking. So she goes on foot, through the industrial district, past the commercial zone, into the heart of pack territory where the old buildings stand, where power and history pulse through every stone. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. It would be beautiful if she could feel anything beyond the churning dread in her stomach. Other wolves pass her on the street, all heading in the same direction, dressed in their finest clothes. They don't acknowledge her. She's become very good at being invisible. The grand hall rises before her like a cathedral, all stone and stained glass, built a century ago when the Ironclaw Pack was founded. Warm light spills from the tall windows. She can hear the rumble of voices inside, hundreds of wolves gathering, the air electric with anticipation. Lysandra's steps slow, her hands are trembling again, worse than ever. Every instinct screams at her to turn around, to run back to her small apartment where at least she's safe, where no one can see her, judge her, remember her failure. But Dax's words echo in her mind. No exceptions. She climbs the stone steps, her legs feel like lead. At the massive oak doors, she pauses, pressing her palm against the ancient wood, drawing one shaky breath, then another. Then she pushes the door open and steps into the light. The grand hall is exactly as she remembers, and worse. The vaulted ceiling soars 40 feet high, crossed with dark wooden beams. Chandeliers made of antlers and iron hang like ancient crowns, blazing with candlelight. Long tables are arranged in a horseshoe pattern, packed with wolves in their finest clothes, talking, laughing, drinking from brass goblets. The smell of roasted meat and spiced wine fills the air, along with the musk of hundreds of wolves in close quarters, their combined power making the atmosphere thick and oppressive. At the head of the hall, on a raised platform, sits the high table. Alpha Brennan occupies the central chair, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes. To his right sits his beta, Marcus, and several council members. To his left, the chair meant for honored guests sits empty, waiting. Lysandra slips along the wall, trying to find a shadow to disappear into, but there are no shadows here. The hall is blazing with light, designed to showcase the pack's strength and prosperity. She finds a spot near the back, partially hidden behind a stone column, and presses herself against the wall, making herself as small as possible. Is that? A whisper, somewhere to her left. The broken one. I can't believe they let her come. Brennan said everyone. I guess that technically includes defects. The words drift over her like poison. She keeps her eyes down, her hands clasped in front of her, her breathing shallow. Just survive this. Just get through it. A commotion at the main entrance silences the hall. Every head turns. The massive doors open, and the temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. He enters. Violin Darkwater, the supreme alpha. He is nothing like the boisterous, hardy alphas of Ironclaw, where they are warm and loud. He is winter itself, tall easily 6.5 feet with shoulders that seem to block out the doorway. His hair is jet black, pulled back from a face that looks carved from granite. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes of deep obsidian that seem to absorb all light. He wears simple clothes, black leather and dark wool, but he radiates power like heat from a forge. The air around him seems to vibrate with barely restrained violence. Every wolf in the hall drops their gaze in automatic submission. Even Alpha, Brennan lowers his head in respect. Violin walks through the hall like a predator moving through a field of prey. His movements economical, precise. He takes his seat at the high table without a word, his expression utterly blank, his dark eyes scanning the assembled pack with cold assessment. He is evaluating them, judging them, and finding them wanting. The feast begins. Servants bring course after course roasted game, fresh bread, honey cakes, rivers of wine. Conversation resumes, but it's more subdued now. Everyone aware of the Supreme Alpha's presence, everyone performing their role. Strong warriors laugh too loudly. Beautiful Omegas arrange themselves strategically, hoping to catch his eye. Council members pontificate about loyalty and tradition. Violin eats little, drinks less. He watches everything with those dark, cold eyes. Lysandra has been here an hour, enduring the whispers and sidelong glances, when she sees Garrett stand up. Her former intended has aged, well, he's 30 now, more muscular, his blonde hair styled perfectly, his jaw strong. He's mated now, to a stunning Omega named Seraphine who sits beside him with a smug smile. Garrett has everything he wanted. Everything Lysandra failed to give him. He raises his goblet, and the hall quiets. Alpha Brennan, honored Supreme Alpha, I propose we showcase the finest qualities of Ironclaw Pack tonight. Our strength, our loyalty, and… His eyes scan the room, landing on Lysandra with laser precision. Our traditions. Lysandra's blood turns to ice. We have among us. Garrett continues, his voice carrying perfectly, pitched for maximum impact. A keeper of old ways, an Omega who carries the musical traditions of her grandmother, Mira Ashenlore, who was renowned for her violin mastery. No, 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 no. Lysandra, Garrett calls, his voice dripping with false warmth, with calculated cruelty. Why don't you honor our esteemed guest with a performance? Show the Supreme Alpha, the cultural richness of our pack. Every eye turns toward her. Hundreds of faces, ranging from confusion to pity, to barely concealed glee. They all know what Garrett is doing. They all know she doesn't have her violin. They all know this is a trap designed to humiliate her in front of the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. Alpha Brennan, sensing entertainment, nods enthusiastically. Yes, excellent idea, Garrett. Lysandra, come forward. The hall waits, the silence is crushing. Lysandra's heart hammers so hard she thinks it might break her ribs. Her hands are shaking violently now. She can't move, can't breathe, can't think. I don't have my instrument, Alpha, she manages, her voice barely a whisper. Garrett's smile widens. No instrument? How unfortunate. He pauses for effect. Perhaps someone could lend her one? Surely someone here has. I have one. A clear voice from the right side of the hall. Lysandra turns to see Malus, the pack's official musician, stand up. She's an older beta, stern-faced, who's always been coldly professional toward Lysandra. She walks to a cabinet near the front and retrieves a violin, her ceremonial instrument, beautiful and expensive, with mother-of-pearl inlays and pristine strings. She carries it forward and holds it out toward Lysandra. Play, Malus says flatly. Show us what the Ashenlore bloodline was known for. It's not kindness, it's the opposite. Malus is ensuring there's no escape, no excuse. The trap is complete. Lysandra stands frozen, as Malus walks toward her, the violin extended like a weapon. Every instinct screams at her to run, to bolt from the hall and never look back, to accept her exile, to disappear completely rather than face this moment. She looks at the faces around her, Garrett's triumphant smirk, Seraphine's malicious delight, Alpha Brennan's oblivious enthusiasm. The general pack's mixture of pity and anticipation. They're all waiting for her to shatter, to provide tonight's entertainment, to confirm everything they've always believed about her. Her eyes drift to the high table, to the Supreme Alpha. Violin Darkwater hasn't moved. His expression remains blank, unreadable, but his dark eyes are fixed on her now. Watching, waiting, judging. He expects nothing from her. None of them do. To them, she's already a failure, a broken thing incapable of producing anything but embarrassment. Malus reaches her, holding out the violin. Well? The older woman says coldly. You're keeping the Supreme Alpha waiting. Lysandra's hands are trembling so badly, she doesn't know if she can even hold the instrument, let alone play it. But as she stares at the beautiful violin, a memory surfaces sharp and clear as crystal. She's 12 years old, sitting in her grandmother's cottage, tears streaming down her face after a particularly painful, failed shift attempt. I can't do anything right, she'd sobbed. I'm broken, grandmother. I'm useless. Mira had set aside her mending and pulled Lysandra close. Listen to me, little wolf. You are not broken. You are different. And different is not less. She'd placed the violin in Lysandra's hands. The pack measures worth by teeth and claws, by dominance and submission. But there are older magics, deeper truths. Your wolf is quiet because she's listening. And when you're ready, when you find what you're listening for, everyone will hear. What am I listening for? Lysandra had whispered. Mira's eyes had been ancient and knowing. For the song only you can sing. For the truth only you can tell. For the soul that matches yours. The memory fades. Lysandra is back in the grand hall, with hundreds of wolves watching, waiting for her humiliation. But something has shifted inside her. A small flame, long dormant, flickers to life. She is tired. Tired of being small, of being silent, of being ashamed of something she never chose. Tired of carrying their judgment like stones in her chest. Tired of letting Garrett's rejection define her entire existence. If she's going to be humiliated anyway, she might as well go down fighting. If they want a performance, she'll give them one. But not for them. Not for Garrett's entertainment or Alpha Brennan's political maneuvering. She'll play for herself, for her grandmother, for the quiet, wounded wolf inside her that has never been allowed to speak. Lysandra reaches out and takes the violin from Malus. The wood is warm, alive under her fingers. She lifts it to her shoulder, feeling its weight settle into the familiar position. Her hands are still shaking, but as she picks up the bow, something steadies. She walks toward the center of the hall. Each step is agony, but each step is also defiance. The crowd parts for her, wolves leaning back, creating a circle of space. She reaches the middle of the horseshoe of tables and stops. She doesn't look at Garrett. Doesn't look at the sneering faces or the pitying ones. She closes her eyes, blocking out the hall, the pack, the judgment. She draws a breath, deep into her lungs, and for the first time in 3 years, she doesn't try to be small. She positions the bow over the strings. Her hands have stopped shaking. In this moment, with the violin against her shoulder, she is exactly where she's supposed to be. And she begins to play. The first note is not sound, it's a feeling. A vibration that travels through the floorboards, up through the soles of every wolf's feet, resonating in their bones. The hall, which had been filled with whispers and muffled laughter, goes utterly, supernaturally silent. Lysandra plays from memory, from instinct, from the deepest part of herself. It's not one of the traditional pack songs, the anthems of battle and glory, the celebration hymns. It's something else entirely. Something older. It's the song her grandmother taught her in secret, late at night when the pack slept. This is forbidden music, Mira had whispered, her weathered fingers guiding Lysandra's. From the time before packs, before hierarchy, when wolves were wild and followed only the moon, it's called the soul call. Only those with the gift can play it, and only one wolf in all the world can truly hear it. The melody is haunting, primal, filled with longing and power. It speaks of ancient forests and snow-covered peaks, of running alone under stars, of a howl that echoes across mountains, searching, always searching for its answer. The music builds, layer upon layer, and with each phrase, something impossible begins to happen. The air in the hall changes, thickens. The temperature drops as if winter has walked through the door. The candles in the chandeliers flicker wildly, their flames bending toward Lysandra as if drawn by an invisible force. A scent fills the hall, pine and snow, mountain stone and wild wind, so strong and pure that wolves gasp, their heads turning, searching for the source. But the scent isn't coming from outside. It's coming from her. Lysandra's eyes are still closed, lost in the music, but her body is changing. A silver light begins to emanate from her skin, faint at first, then growing stronger. Her hair, dull brown moments ago, seems to catch fire with auburn highlights that hadn't been there before. The shabby navy dress she wears no longer looks plain, it seems to shimmer, as if woven from twilight itself. The wolves nearest to her stumble backward, their eyes wide with shock and recognition. Because the scent pouring off her is not the weak, suppressed omega scent they've known for years. It's something else entirely. something that hasn't been seen in generations. It's the scent of an Omega Prime, a queen among Omegas, a wolf so rare and powerful that ancient packs went to war over them. The text said they appeared once every 500 years, marked by a gift that transcended normal Omega abilities. They weren't just nurturers or peacemakers. They were power incarnate, capable of calling to an alpha's soul with such force that the bond was unbreakable, undeniable, eternal. Her wolf, the one that never shifted properly, wasn't broken at all. It was dormant, waiting, saving its strength for this exact moment. The music swells to a crescendo, and Lysandra's eyes snap open. They're no longer faded amber. They're blazing gold, lit from within, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, the shadow of a massive wolf appears behind her, spectral and silver, its eyes ancient and knowing. At the high table, Violin Darkwater has risen from his chair. His goblet lies overturned, wine spreading across the table like blood. His hands grip the edge of the table so hard the wood cracks under his fingers. His entire body is rigid, every muscle locked, and his eyes are no longer the deep obsidian black, they're burning silver. His wolf has surged to the surface, called by something it recognizes at the deepest, most primal level. His head tilts back, and a sound rips from his throat. Not quite human, not quite wolf. It's a howl of recognition, of agony, of desperate hunger. The sound of a soul that has been split in two for 35 years finally sensing its other half. The soul call has found its answer. Valen's howl cuts through the music, and Lysandra's bow freezes on the strings. The last note hangs in the air, shimmering, as her eyes find his across the hall. Time seems to stop. The hundreds of wolves fade into nothing. There is only him, and her, and the invisible thread of destiny pulling taut between them. The Supreme Alpha moves, not with the controlled precision he entered with, but with raw, primal purpose. He vaults over the high table in a single leap, his massive frame moving with impossible grace. Glasses shatter, plates crash to the floor. Alpha Brennan scrambles backward, terror on his face as Violin lands and begins walking toward the center of the hall. The crowd parts like water before a shark. Wolves press themselves against the walls, their heads bowed in automatic submission. Some are shaking. One young warrior actually whimpers. The power rolling off Violin is suffocating alpha dominance amplified 1,000 times, barely contained. On the verge of violence. He crosses the hall in 10 strides. Lysandra stands frozen, the violin still at her shoulder, the bow hanging loose in her hand. She should be terrified. This is the most dangerous wolf in 5 territories, his control clearly shattered, his eyes blazing with inhuman light. One wrong move, and he could kill her without meaning to. But she isn't afraid. The golden light in her eyes matches the silver in his. Her wolf, the one that never fully emerged, that always held back, is surging inside her now, pressing against her skin, desperate to meet him. Violin stops 3 feet away. Up close, he's even more imposing, broad-shouldered, powerfully built, radiating heat and dominance. But his hands, when he slowly raises them, are trembling. The most feared alpha in the Northern Territories is shaking. You. His voice is gravelly, barely controlled. What did you just play? Lysandra's throat is dry. The soul call. My grandmother taught me. I didn't know. I didn't think. Your scent. He leans in, inhaling deeply, and a shudder runs through his massive frame. Pine and wild roses. First snow on mountain stone. I've smelled it in my dreams for 30 years. I thought I was going insane. His eyes, burning silver, lock onto hers. What are you? I was told I'm broken. An Omega who can't shift properly. I'm nothing. You're everything. The words come out as a growl, possessive and absolute. He takes another step closer, and now they're inches apart. His heat envelops her. His scent, dark and wild and powerful, fills her lungs. You're Omega Prime. The text said they were extinct. They said the bloodline died out 400 years ago. A collective gasp ripples through the hall. Omega Prime. The words are whispered, passed from wolf to wolf. Disbelief and awe, spreading like wildfire. Garrett, still standing at his table, has gone white as snow. His smug superiority has evaporated, replaced by dawning horror as he realizes what he rejected what he threw away. Valen's eyes haven't left Lysandra's face. He's studying her like she's the answer to every question he's ever had. Like she's the missing piece of a puzzle that's tormented him his entire life. Slowly, reverently, he reaches out and takes the violin from her hands, setting it carefully on a nearby table. Then he returns his attention to her, and the intensity in his gaze could ignite stone. "I'm going to ask you a question," he says, his voice dropping to a rough whisper meant only for her. "And I need you to answer honestly. Can you feel it? The pull?" Lysandra nods. She can't speak. The pull he's talking about is overwhelming, a magnetic force that makes her want to step into his arms, to press herself against his chest, to never be separate from him again. It's terrifying and right and completely undeniable. "How long have you been alone?" he asks. 3 years, she whispers. "Since my rejection." Something feral flashes in his eyes. "Who rejected you?" Lysandra's gaze flickers toward Garrett. Valen follows her look, and the temperature in the hall drops another 10 degrees. He turns his head slowly toward where Garrett stands, and the look on the Supreme Alpha's face promises death. "You." The single word is a death sentence. "You rejected your mate?" "I didn't know," Garrett stammers, backing away. "She couldn't shift. She was weak. How was I supposed to?" "You rejected an Omega Prime." Valen's voice is soft now, which is somehow more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. "You performed a severance ritual on your fated mate. Do you understand what you've done? The crime you've committed against natural law?" The hall is utterly silent. Even Alpha Brennan doesn't dare speak. Valen turns back to Lysandra, and his expression transforms. The cold fury melts into something else: wonder, possession, desperate need. "She wasn't weak," he says, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Her wolf was dormant because it was waiting. Omega Primes don't present their full power until they meet their true mate." His hand lifts, hovering near her face but not quite touching, as if he's afraid she'll disappear. Not the mate chosen by politics or arrangement. Their soul mate. The Alpha they were literally born to complete. He takes a breath, and when he speaks again, his voice carries through the hall with the weight of law, of destiny, of irrevocable truth. "Mine." The word echoes off the stone walls. A claim, a declaration, a promise, and a threat rolled into one. Lysandra stares up at him, at this legendary, terrifying, impossibly powerful Alpha, who is looking at her like she's the sun, and he's been living in darkness his entire life. The broken, rejected Omega that Ironclaw Pack threw away is staring into the eyes of the Supreme Alpha, and he's calling her his. "Say it," Valen whispers, "just for her. Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not alone in this." And Lysandra, who has spent 3 years being small and silent and ashamed, who has been told she's broken and worthless and defective, feels something crack open inside her chest. The chains fall away, the shame dissolves, the fear evaporates. She lifts her chin and speaks clearly, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "You're not alone. You're mine too." The Supreme Alpha of the Northern Territories closes his eyes as if she's just spoken a sacred prayer. Then he does something no one has ever seen him do. He drops to one knee before her, his head bowed, one fist pressed to his heart in the ancient gesture of ultimate submission. "My queen," he says. "My mate. My soul." The hall erupts. 6 weeks later, Lysandra stands in a chamber carved from living stone, high in the Darkwater Mountains. Floor-to-ceiling windows look out over a kingdom of snow-capped peaks and ancient forests that stretch to the horizon. The room is vast but warm, heated by a massive fireplace where flames dance over logs as thick as her waist. Furs cover the floors, wolf pelts in silver and black and white. Tapestries hang on the walls, depicting the history of the Darkwater line going back 1,000 years. This is her home now. Not a cramped apartment on the edge of forgotten territory. Not a place of exile and shame. A palace in the sky, where the air is thin and clean, and the stars at night are so bright, they seem within reach. She's dressed in deep emerald silk that flows like water over her transformed body. Because she has transformed. The moment her bond with Valen was sealed, a 3-day ceremony conducted by the Northern Council's eldest shamans, her wolf finally emerged fully. Not the small, struggling creature that caused her such pain in Ironclaw territory. A magnificent silver wolf, large and powerful, with eyes like molten gold. She was waiting for me, Violin had explained, his voice filled with awe as he watched her first full shift. Omega primes don't waste energy on incomplete bonds. She knew you weren't meant for that other alpha. She was conserving her strength for when your true mate found you. Her true mate. Valen Darkwater, Supreme Alpha, is currently in his war room 3 floors below, meeting with his generals. Even now, separated by stone and distance, she can feel him a warm, constant presence at the back of her mind, their bond humming like a plucked string. He's annoyed about something. Military politics. She smiles, sending a wave of calm through the bond, and feels his immediate response. Gratitude, love. Possessive satisfaction that she's here, that she's his. A knock at the door. Enter, she calls, her voice stronger now, carrying the natural authority of an Omega Prime. The door opens, to reveal Nessa, her personal attendant, a kind-faced beta who treats Lysandra with genuine respect. My lady, you have a visitor. He says he's your brother. Lysandra's heart jumps. Cassian? Shall I send him in? Yes, please. Moments later, her younger brother enters, and Lysandra's throat tightens with emotion. He looks the same sandy hair, earnest eyes, but he's moving stiffly, as if expecting to be thrown out at any moment. He stops just inside the door, staring at her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Lysa? His childhood nickname for her, not used in years. Cass. She crosses to him in 3 strides and pulls him into a fierce embrace. He stiffens in surprise, then hugs her back desperately. I'm sorry, he chokes out. I'm so sorry I stopped visiting. I was a coward. I let father convince me that you were… Shh. She pulls back, holding his shoulders, meeting his eyes. You were protecting yourself, I understand. I should have protected you. His eyes are wet. You're my sister, and I abandoned you when you needed me most. You're here now. That's what matters. She studies him, noting the worn clothes, the thin frame. Are you still an Ironclaw? He nods. Father disowned me when I said I was coming here, said I was choosing a traitor over my family. Rage flashes through her, but she pushes it down. You have a home here if you want it. Valen's already said any of my blood family who wish to join us are welcome. Cassian's eyes widen. He said that? He said a lot more than that, actually. Most of it involving what he'd like to do to Garrett and father, but I've convinced him that legal channels are more appropriate. She smiles grimly. Mostly convinced him, anyway. 2 months after the disastrous feast, the summons arrives at Ironclaw territory. It's delivered by a contingent of Valen's personal guard, 20 elite warriors in black and silver, their presence alone enough to send the entire pack into terrified submission. The message is formal, written in the old legal language. Alpha Garrett Thornwald is required to present himself before the Northern Council to answer charges of illegal severance, mate rejection, and crimes against the natural order. Garrett, who has spent the last 2 months in a state of barely controlled panic, has no choice but to comply. To refuse would be to declare war on the Supreme Alpha. He arrives at the Darkwater Mountains with Alpha Brennan and a small delegation, all of them pale and hollow-eyed. The trial takes place in the Grand Hall of Judgment, a circular chamber where the 5 high alphas of the Northern Territories sit in judgment. Valen occupies the central throne, his face carved from ice, his eyes cold and merciless. Lysandra sits beside him in a throne of equal height, a statement that has sent shockwaves through every pack in the north. Omega Primes are not decorative consorts. They are co-rulers, equal in power and authority. Garrett is brought forward in chains. Not physical chains that would be beneath the dignity of the proceeding, but spelled chains, runes of binding that glow faintly silver against his skin, suppressing his wolf, forcing him into a state of submission he's never experienced before. He's forced to kneel in the center of the circle, under the weight of 5 high alphas' combined dominance. Sweat beads on his forehead. His hands shake. Garrett Thornwald. Valen's voice echoes through the chamber. You are charged with performing an illegal severance ritual on a fated mate bond. How do you answer? I didn't know. Garrett's voice cracks. She couldn't shift, She was weak. By pack law, I had the right. By pack law, Valen interrupts, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. You had the right to reject an arranged political match. But this was not a political match. This was a fated bond. A soul bond. The kind written into the very fabric of our existence by the moon herself. One of the other high alphas, a scarred woman named Kirena, leans forward. Did you consult a shaman before performing the severance? Did you verify the nature of the bond? Garrett's silence is damning. You didn't. Valen says flatly. You were embarrassed. Your pride was wounded. So you severed a sacred bond without verification, without counsel, without regard for law or consequence. He pauses. Do you know what happens when a fated bond is severed improperly? Garrett shakes his head, terrified. The Omega's wolf goes dormant. It retreats into the deepest part of their soul, protecting itself from the trauma, waiting for its true mate to call it back to life. In rejecting Lysandra, you didn't just humiliate her, you nearly killed her wolf. If she had been a normal Omega, the severance would have destroyed her completely. But she's not normal, Garrett whispers, desperation in his eyes. She's Omega Prime. She survived despite you, not because of you. Lysandra speaks for the first time, her voice calm and clear. Every eye turns to her. She stands, and even the high alphas lean back slightly, respecting her power. You saw weakness where there was dormant strength. You saw failure where there was patience. You rejected the greatest gift the moon could have given you because it didn't fit your expectations. She walks down from the platform, approaching Garrett. He flinches as she nears, but she doesn't touch him. She simply looks at him, really looks at him, and he sees what he lost. Not the broken, trembling Omega he humiliated, but a queen in her full power, radiant and terrible, and utterly beyond his reach. I forgive you, she says softly. The words clearly shock him. Not because you deserve it, because carrying hatred for you would give you power over me, and you have none. You are nothing to me now, not even worth my anger. The dismissal in her tone is more devastating than any punishment could be. She turns her back on him, the ultimate gesture of contempt, and returns to Valen's side. The verdict is delivered swiftly. Garrett is stripped of his title, his lands, his position in Ironclaw Pack. He's exiled to the border territories, forbidden from ever holding rank or authority again. His mate bond with Seraphine is dissolved. She chose to stay with the pack rather than follow him into exile. Alpha Brennan, who allowed the illegal severance and then tried to use Lysandra's humiliation for political gain, is removed from leadership. Ironclaw Pack is placed under direct supervision of the Northern Council until a new Alpha can be properly chosen. As Garrett is led away in his spelled chains, he makes one final, desperate attempt. He turns back toward Lysandra, his face crumbling. Please, I made a mistake. I didn't understand. Can't you? Valen is on his feet in an instant, moving between them, a wall of protective fury. You will not speak to her. You will not look at her. You will carry your shame in silence, and you will be grateful I'm letting you keep your life. The threat in his voice is absolute. Garrett is dragged from the chamber, and the doors boom shut behind him. In the ringing silence that follows, Lysandra feels Valen's hand find hers, his fingers intertwining with hers, warm and solid and real. Justice has been served, the past has been laid to rest, and they are free. That night, alone in their chambers, Valen tells her the full story. They lie together before the fireplace, Lysandra's back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her, their wolves content and quiet in the presence of their mate. My line is ancient, he begins, his deep voice rumbling through her. The first Darkwater made a pact with the moon goddess herself, 5,000 years ago. She granted him ultimate power, the strength to unite the warring packs, to bring peace to the northern territories. But such power comes with a price. What price? Lysandra asks softly. Division. The moon split our souls in two. Every Darkwater Alpha is born incomplete. We have the power, the strength, the dominance, but we're hollow inside. Cold, unable to form deep connections, unable to feel true joy or love or peace. We're functionally immortal, we age slowly, live centuries, but we live alone. He's silent for a long moment. She can feel the weight of his loneliness, accumulated over 35 years, pressing against their bond. The only cure is finding our other half, he continues, an Omega Prime. They're born once every few centuries, scattered across the territories, never in predictable bloodlines. They're the other half of our soul, the warmth to our cold, the light to our darkness. Without them, we're incomplete. With them, we become what we were always meant to be, not just powerful, but whole. That's why you traveled so much, Lysandra realizes. You were searching. For 30 years. Every pack. Every territory. I was. Starting to believe my prime had died before I was born. That I was cursed to be the Darkwater who would fail. Who would die alone and incomplete. His arms tighten around her. And then I heard you play. The Soul Call. A song that only exists in ancient texts. That hasn't been heard in 500 years. A song that only an Omega Prime can play, and only their true mate can hear. My grandmother knew. Lysandra whispers. She taught me that song on purpose. She knew what I was, even when I didn't. She gave you the key to unlock both our destinies. Violin turns her in his arms so she's facing him, his silver eyes intense in the firelight. Your inability to shift in Ironclaw wasn't a weakness, Lysa. It was your wolf protecting you. She knew Garrett wasn't your true mate. She refused to waste her energy on a false bond. She was waiting for me. Tears slide down Lysandra's cheeks. I thought I was broken for so long. You were never broken. You were perfect. You just hadn't found your purpose yet. He wipes her tears with his thumb. His touch infinitely gentle. The moon doesn't make mistakes. Every moment of suffering, every year of loneliness, it was leading us both here, to each other. She thinks of the cold apartment, the years of shame, the crushing rejection. It had felt meaningless, cruel, like punishment for simply existing. But now, lying in the arms of her mate, feeling complete for the first time in her life, she understands. The darkness made the light brighter. The loneliness made this connection deeper. The breaking made her strong enough to handle the destiny waiting for her. I would go through it all again, she says softly, if it meant ending up here, with you. Valen's response is to kiss her, deep and claiming and full of the emotion he spent 35 years unable to feel. When he pulls back, his eyes are blazing silver, his wolf at the surface, purring with satisfaction. My queen, he murmurs. My soul, my everything. And Lysandra, who once believed she was worthless, smiles against his lips and whispers, my home. Spring comes to the Darkwater Mountains in a rush of melting snow and blooming wildflowers. Lysandra stands on the highest balcony of the palace, the same balcony where Violin first brought her, where she'd looked out over his kingdom in awe and terror, unable to believe this was her life now. 6 months have passed. 6 months of learning to be a queen, of mastering her wolf, of growing into the power that was always hers but never acknowledged. She wears a gown of silver silk that catches the morning light, and around her neck hangs a pendant, a wolf carved from moonstone, the symbol of the Omega Prime, the mark of her station. But she doesn't feel weighed down by responsibility. She feels free. The violin rests in her hands, not Melis's ceremonial instrument, but a new one, crafted specifically for her by the finest instrument maker in the territories. The wood is ancient, mountain ash, the strings spun silver, and when she plays it, the sound is pure magic. She brings it to her shoulder now, looking out over the snow-capped peaks, and begins to play. Not the soul call that song has served its purpose. Instead, she plays a song of her own creation. A melody of joy, of peace, of a soul finally home. The music floats out over the mountains, carried on the spring wind, and down in the training yards below. She feels Violin stop mid-conversation with his generals. She feels his attention turn toward her, feels the wave of love and possessive pride that surges through their bond. A moment later, he appears in the doorway, still in his training leathers, his hair disheveled, but his eyes soft as they land on her. He doesn't speak. He simply crosses to her and wraps his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder as she plays, his warmth enveloping her. This is what she once had in her apartment: solitude, a violin, silence. But everything has transformed. The cold floor has become warm stone. The leaky ceiling has become open sky. The crushing loneliness has become the constant presence of her mate, the half of her soul she never knew was missing. She finishes the song and lowers the violin, leaning back into Valen's embrace. They stand in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher, painting the mountain peaks in shades of gold and pink. Do you ever regret it? Valen asks quietly. Leaving your old life behind? Lysandra thinks of the cold apartment, the warehouse job, the years of being invisible. She thinks of Garrett's sneer and the pack's contempt. She thinks of who she was small, frightened, convinced of her own worthlessness. No, she says simply. I don't miss who I was, but I'm grateful for her. She survived long enough for me to become who I was always meant to be. Valen's arms tighten around her. I searched for you for 30 years. I would have searched for 30 more. 100 more. Forever, if that's what it took. She turns in his arms, setting the violin carefully aside, and cups his face in her hands. This fearsome, powerful, legendary alpha who rules 5 territories looks at her like she hung the moon and stars. You found me, she whispers. In a pack that threw me away, in a hall full of wolves who saw nothing but a failure, you looked at me and saw everything. I saw you, he corrects. Just you, exactly as you are. Exactly as you were always meant to be. They kiss, soft and slow, the spring sun warm on their faces, the mountain wind carrying the scent of new growth and endless possibility. Somewhere far below, in the territories they rule, in the forests and villages, their people go about their lives, secure in the knowledge that their supreme alpha has finally found his queen, that the old prophecies have been fulfilled, that the Darkwater line will continue, stronger than ever. But up here, in this moment, none of that matters. There is no politics, no responsibility, no judgment or expectation. There is only Lysandra and Valen, 2 halves of a soul, finally reunited. 2 wolves who wandered alone in the darkness, who survived rejection and loneliness and crushing isolation, who found each other against impossible odds. The broken Omega who couldn't shift has become the most powerful queen in the Northern Territories. The cold supreme alpha who never smiled has learned to laugh in the arms of his mate. And the pack that laughed when she picked up the violin? They don't matter anymore. They never really did. What matters is this. She is home. She is whole. She is loved. And the wolf that once hid in fear now runs free under the moon, silver and magnificent, beside her mate, forever.